In the late 18th century, when the most powerful empire on Earth believed its distant colonies would remain obedient forever, a silent storm was gathering across the Atlantic, and from that storm would rise a new nation, the United States. But before independence could be claimed, it had to be forged through fire, hunger, defeat, and unbreakable courage during the American Revolution from 1775 to 1783, a struggle that would forever change the meaning of freedom, power, and human ambition. For more than a century, the 13 colonies had lived under British rule, protected by the empire and connected through trade and culture. Yet after Britain's costly wars in Europe, the government in London, led by King George III, began imposing new taxes and strict laws such as the Stamp Act, the Sugar Act, and the Tea Act, demanding money from colonists who had no representatives in Parliament, creating deep resentment and giving birth to the powerful slogan, "No taxation without representation," which spread through newspapers, taverns, churches, and town meetings, slowly transforming loyal subjects into determined rebels. Protests grew stronger each year. Merchants refused to import British goods. Citizens organized boycotts. Political groups formed in secret. When British authorities tried to assert control, resistance only intensified, reaching a dramatic peak in the Boston Tea Party, when colonists disguised as Native Americans dumped shiploads of tea into the harbor, openly challenging imperial authority and proving that fear no longer ruled their hearts. Britain responded with punishment, sending more soldiers, closing ports, and tightening control, believing force would restore order, but instead, it pushed the colonies closer to rebellion. By April 1775, tension finally exploded at Lexington and Concord, where colonial militias clashed with British troops in early morning chaos, muskets firing through smoke and confusion, marking the first bloodshed of the Revolution, and sending a clear message to the world that compromise was over and war had begun. Across the colonies, volunteers rushed to join local militias, carrying hunting rifles and homemade supplies, ready to defend their communities against a global empire. Soon after, colonial leaders gathered in the Continental Congress and appointed George Washington as commander of the Continental Army, a man known for discipline, patience, and moral authority, who now faced the nearly impossible task of turning farmers, craftsmen, and laborers into a fighting force capable of standing against Britain's professional army and navy. Washington inherited an army plagued by shortages, disease, poor training, and low morale. Yet through persistence and example, he slowly built unity and loyalty among his soldiers. The early years of the war were brutal. American forces suffered heavy defeats. Major cities fell into British hands. Soldiers marched barefoot through snow. Food and ammunition were often scarce. Many questioned whether independence was even possible. Yet Washington understood that survival itself was victory, and as long as his army remained intact, the revolution lived. In 1776, the conflict entered a new phase. Inspired by Enlightenment ideas and colonial frustration, Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence, proclaiming that all people were born with natural rights and that governments existed to protect them, boldly announcing to the world that the colonies were no longer subjects of a king, but free and equal states. This document transformed rebellion into a moral crusade and gave soldiers a powerful reason to endure suffering. That suffering reached its peak during the winter at Valley Forge, where thousands of soldiers lived in crude huts, starving, freezing, and falling ill while lacking proper clothing and medical care. Yet instead of collapsing, the army trained relentlessly under forward officers, learning discipline, coordination, and modern tactics, emerging in spring as a stronger and more professional force. A crucial turning point came in 1777 at the Battle of Saratoga, where American forces surrounded and captured a major British army, shocking Europe and proving that the rebels could defeat professional troops in open battle. This victory changed the course of the war, convincing foreign powers that American independence was achievable. Across the ocean, Benjamin Franklin worked tirelessly in European courts, using intelligence, charm, and patience to gain support for the American cause, presenting the Revolution as a fight for universal liberty rather than local rebellion. And his efforts succeeded when France officially joined the war in 1778, providing money, weapons, soldiers, and naval fleets, transforming the conflict into a global struggle that stretched across oceans and continents. With French support, American morale soared. Naval battles disrupted British supply lines, joint operations weakened enemy positions, the war expanded to the Caribbean and the Atlantic. Britain, already exhausted by conflicts elsewhere, found itself fighting on too many fronts at once. Slowly, the balance of power shifted. The climax came in 1781 at Yorktown, where Washington and French forces trapped the main British army between land and sea, surrounding it with artillery and cutting off all escape routes, bombarding enemy positions day and night until surrender became inevitable. When British troops finally laid down their weapons, it signaled the collapse of imperial hopes in North America and marked the effective end of major fighting. 2 years later, in 1783, the Treaty of Paris officially recognized American independence, ending the war and acknowledging that a group of former colonies had defeated a global empire through unity, sacrifice, and belief in liberty. Soldiers returned home as heroes. Flags replaced royal symbols. A new political experiment began. The consequences were enormous. Monarchies across Europe trembled as revolutionary ideas spread. Future uprisings in France, Latin America, and beyond drew inspiration from the American example. Within the new nation, fierce debates emerged over democracy, slavery, federal power, and human rights, shaping the country's identity for generations. What began as protests over taxes became a battle over dignity and self-rule. What started with scattered militias became a world-changing revolution. From frozen camps to thunderous sieges, from secret meetings to international diplomacy, the American Revolution proved that ordinary people, united by ideas and courage, could challenge the strongest empire on earth and reshape history forever.